This video is going to be a sort of addendum to my rant I made the other day. This isn't my massive critique I made a community post about. We're gonna let that one cook so I don't make very obvious mistakes in it. So that one will come out in the future, not right now. What this video is just going to be me correcting some of the very obvious things that I got wrong in my video, and following up and elaborating on some of my points that I feel like I conveyed in a really poor way. So, first of all, the blood's always been black. I don't know where I got it in my thick skull that the blood was red. That's not true. The blood in Helluva Boss has always been black ever since the first episode. That is just a complete misremembering on my part, and I fucked up. You know, I said something really stupid. It's red in the storyboards. Obviously, if I was an animator, I guess I would know this, so that way the animators know that it's blood, because it'd be weird to have black lines illustrating blood on black line art for the characters. So, my point I made about it being red in the storyboards isn't even a good point. Another thing I got wrong, and this one I want to go into a little bit more detail on, is Moxxie's mother. So, in the episode where we see Moxxie's mom, in the flashbacks, it's really difficult to see, but in photos, portraits in the house, we see that Moxxie's mom has these big black horns. Well, they're not that big, but like, she has black horns. They're entirely black. The character in the boat that Moxxie pushes the cinder block and ends up drowning in that body of water, where we do see Moxxie's mother's heel surface and bubble up, that imp has white horns, meaning that it can't be the same imp unless I guess they painted over the horns, which they didn't do. So it's not the same imp. It's not the same character. And if you put their two character designs like side by side, it very clearly isn't the same character. The only reason I thought this was the same character, the only reason I thought that this was Moxxie's mom, is purely because the heel bubbles up at the end. The way that I saw the scene, because we never saw the feet of the imp in the boat, I thought that that was what they were wearing, and either the father had dressed him up, Crimson had dressed him up to look like Moxxie's mother to make him feel like shit, because I guess he would do that, or, more likely, what I interpreted, that was just Moxxie's mom he killed, oopsie poopsie. That's not true. It's a completely different character like I said. The way it's actually supposed to be perceived is just, Moxxie kills this random imp because his father wants him to, and his father killed his mother earlier. And the reason that the boot surfaces, or the heel surfaces at that time when we go past it, is just so we, the audience, know. My bad. Again, my bad. I was completely wrong. Everyone who called me retarded for thinking that that was Moxxie's mom, and that Moxxie killed his mom, yeah, no, I was completely wrong on that. Another thing I also want to mention is I was pretty critical of the fact that Loona hadn't spoken any words recently. Turns out that's because of Loona's voice actress is sort of going through a really shitty situation. Their fiance died, and because of that, they're grieving the loss of them, and they haven't been recording lines, and the crew very clearly doesn't want to recast Loona's voice actress, so it makes sense that they're probably just going to keep this situation going, where until the original voice actress wants to come back and record lines, they're just not going to replace them. They replaced Stryker purely because I guess it's more easy to replace them. I guess I could find someone who sounds similar enough to Stryker to like replace it and make it not that noticeable, but Loona does have a very distinct voice, so it would be a lot more jarring, whereas I guess they just got lucky with Stryker. So yeah, that's why Loona hasn't been speaking in the past 2 episodes, but that makes me wonder why she's been present in them. I feel like Loona is the easiest character to write out of an episode and just have like a throwaway line, where it's like, oh yeah, Luna's back at the office on her phone, and then she's just texting, and then have like a generic noise of her like swooping her hair or something, and then it's like, bam, Luna's just at the office, cool. Okay, so this next one's kind of a big one. This one I feel like I completely butchered how I wanted to actually like say this point, especially because again, it's something that is like a heavy topic, so I should have approached it with a lot more like thought. I should have like worded how I wanted to phrase this a lot better. So I do dearly regret that, and people calling me out on the fact that I worded this entire section poorly in my original rant, I definitely agree. So here's me trying to add context and make up for how badly I did it the first time. There are very clear signs in the show that Stella doesn't like Stolas. Obviously, they are in an arranged marriage, and even in the flashback in Lululand, where we open the episode and they're really young, Stella and Stolas are not, like, they don't do anything like loving to each other in the past. Stella just bemoans Stolas and says, go get Octavia, just go deal with her. I don't want to deal with it right now. Which also alludes to the fact that Stella does not have the best relationship with her own daughter. I understand that it's an arranged marriage and that they were kind of arranged together so that they would have a child. I get that. My interpretation of Stella as a character was just the fact that she hates Stolas so much that she just can't even bear to be in the same room with him. But obviously that's not true. Rewatching the episodes, the way that it's supposed to be framed is that Stella, even though she didn't like Stolas, she didn't, like, hate him. There's a photo where she's fake smiling in it, or, like, really trying hard to smile, even though she's clearly not happy in the Lululand episode, and that's just something she wouldn't do today. She's way too openly hostile and angry at Stolas. So, at some point, they were more stable. The way that the show is written, Stella is already starting to make, like, verbal degradations against Stolas at parties and social gatherings. And this is around the time that Octavia, this is our only way of, like, knowing what time this scene takes place in. Octavia is in her teenage room that we see her in Lululand, so we can assume that this is, like, maybe anywhere from, like, a year ago to a couple months ago. That's my guess. So, with that in mind, obviously, divorces take a lot of time. They do. They do in the real world. They can take literal months, sometimes years. I get that. My question is just that in the flashback, we see that Stolas wants to divorce Stella from before the moment that Blitzo has the book, the grimoire. Because Blitzo didn't have the grimoire until after he seduced Stolas in his bedroom. Stolas then wakes up after a real quick, and then Stolas immediately goes out and declares to everyone openly, especially his wife Stella, that he is going to get a fucking divorce. My thoughts on this, though, is that we immediately flash forward to the future, where he still hasn't even, like, it seems to me, in Lululand's episode, he still hadn't, like, initiated that divorce. They're still eating at the same table, they're still eating in the same room. Stella is being even more openly hostile with Stolas, obviously, because she contacted Stryker to kill him in front of his face, and Octavius too, and they just don't care, probably because it is something that happens regularly, right? I'm not going to do my Stella impression and scream again. It's not the purpose of this video. It's not this, right? So, what I don't understand is just the fact that it feels like we're, like, missing a step, is how I feel. Because with how much we're focusing on this divorce plotline in the show recently in Season 2, it just feels weird to me that, like, Stolas is trying to get this divorce, but it seems like no progress has been made on it until Season 2, Episode 1, when he catches the hand of Stella, and he just says, like, no matter what, I don't care. And then in the next episode, one of the first things we see is that Stella is officially moving out, and Stolas is ignoring his daughter because he hates Stella so much, because Stella and Stolas really, really don't like each other, which makes sense, makes total sense. It just feels weird to me because the way that my mind would read it, I would imagine that the reason they stayed together is because, like, it feels like we're missing a piece in the sense that, like, if there was a line where he tried to get the divorce, but then maybe his father, who we saw in the same episode, was like, I forbade it, I do not want you doing this, Galician royalty, we've never had a divorce in our life, like, you are not doing this, no matter what. And then Stolas gets intimidated by that and is like, fuck, okay, maybe I won't, and he hesitates. That would explain the delay in time, but he's royalty. He is a very high member of society. I feel like you can't use the excuse that he can't get a divorce because he doesn't have enough, like, ability to, because he's royalty. Like, what's stopping him? Like, actually, what is stopping him? Is there a blessed pope? Is there a blessed rope tied at the door to the divorce counseling office? That's what I just don't understand, is that the timeline of things feels a bit weird because they kept it vague on purpose. So, is it as big of a problem as I made it out to sound in my video. Definitely not. And also, on these rewatches, I understand Stella's character a lot more, and I want to quickly sort of touch on that as well in this section, that with Stella, it feels like the way that the writers tried to characterize her, which I feel a lot more sympathetic towards, is that, I mean, Stolas obviously never liked her. We don't see her side of things at all. We don't really see any of her sides of things in the past. All we really see is the fact that she probably didn't like Stolas as well. We know that she was kind of okay with Stolas at one point, like able to exist in the same room without like physically assaulting him or verbally assaulting him. Then it escalated, and then Stolas started sleeping with imps, and that's the thing that broke Stella's mind. She is really mad at Stolas. On top of everything, what's really interesting actually is in the Lululand episode, she gets mad at him for cheating. And something I didn't ever really like process is the fact that we don't know if Stella's ever cheated on Stolas. As far as I know, there's no examples of her doing that. Which is interesting because it could paint the narrative that Stella was faithful to Stolas, if anything, even if she hated him. Which makes her a far more interesting character, and I wish that, like, they emphasize that more in when she talks to Stolas, because I feel like that's a pretty big thing that's really important about her character, that it's subtle, right? And I didn't notice that. That's why I missed it, because I wasn't paying attention. Because, I will admit it, I hate Stella's voice, so that's why I really just didn't listen to her lines that well. But on rewatch, where I'm forcing myself to actually pay attention, that is a my bad. So I do want to addendum that again, my fucking bad. Stella's character makes way more sense to me now, and I think they could do something really interesting with her, but I don't think they're gonna with the way that they wrote things, because they write her kind of like a ditz at times. It's weird. I don't know. But, I'm rambling. Anyways, to stay on track. It just feels weird to me that the timeline as all just feels a bit scuffed, because they kept it vague on purpose. And Stella's overall character isn't actually as cartoonishly evil as I made it out to be. It's just that the way that she's handled writing-wise, her character makes sense for why she would be mad at Stolas, actually. It really makes sense. But it's just that it feels like they don't give her the ability to argue her point of view, and they let Stolas continuously argue his. And it would be interesting if they actually had Stella gain a brain cell and just be like, Stolas, you've cheated on me. I really hate that. I really dislike that. Like, we could have had something, and yeah, I was a shitty person, but, like, I don't know. Like, I'm fanfic writing, whatever. It feels like the writers are gonna say that they gave her her chance to argue it, when I feel like there's so much more she could be saying. I'll leave this whole segment there. Another thing. I mentioned the he can get hurt line. A lot of people have been talking about the he can get hurt line, and it's kind of because it's the thing that pissed me off the most about the most recent episode. Never mind the fact that, like, Blitzo and Stryker didn't get to see each other again when Stryker explicitly is, like, calling out Blitzo, and Stryker and Blitzo had, like, a really interesting dynamic in the Harvest Moon episode. Besides that, which I think is a big miswriting-wise, it feels like the he can get hurt line just really rubbed me the wrong way, because there's many ways you can interpret it, and obviously the way I interpreted it is that he can get hurt, like, in all aspects. Blitzo is, you know, he can be aloof at times, he can be very self-interested and self-obsessed and self-absorbed, but he isn't, like, completely ignorant to the feelings of those around him. At least that's not how it feels like he's been written up to this point. So it feels like Blitzo can understand the concept that Stolas, even though he's royalty, can get hurt, and can actually be hurt both physically and emotionally. Now, what a lot of people have been saying, what a lot of people have been claiming that the scene is supposed to be representing, is the fact that this is the first time he's actually been, like, he's seen Stolas hurt. This is the first time he's actually seen him injured. And I will admit, when rewatching the entire show, it's pretty apparent that every time Stolas is talking to Blitzo, is around Blitzo, he does definitely put on, like, a much happier persona. He is obviously he just really likes Blitz. He really likes hanging out with him. And even if he can be manipulative at times, the happiness he feels with Blitz is coming from a genuine place. So it does feel like you can make the argument, because every single time we see Stolas get emotionally hurt, or like Stella threatening to hit him, which obviously would be, we wouldn't threaten to hit someone that can't take physical damage, it's when Blitzo's not around. When Stolas is singing a song about how he's going to die one day, Blitzo isn't around to hear that. The only person hearing that is presumably Stella in the castle somewhere, and Octavia. It just feels very weird to me, because you have a scene written earlier for my interpretation of the scene where it's him just saying he can get hurt, period. It just feels weird to me that Blitzo goes out of his way to stop Stryker from firing the gun at Stolas. Obviously, people have been arguing, well, there's a difference between knowing that people are going to die, because obviously they live in hell. The whole cycle of hell, part of their job is killing people. They know that people are going to die, and they know that royalty are still people, even if they're, like, born better or whatever, right? Stolas is also a character who is, by far, most likely the most powerful character in the show, that we've, like, seen doing stuff. The way that he just absolutely wrecks the Dorks facility and just steamrolls it like it's nothing, and the fact that also on top of everything he has that really powerful move where he just turns something to stone unless he's kryptonited by blessed rope, which feels kind of cheap, but like whatever. It makes sense that obviously Blitzo probably hasn't seen Stolas injured in any sense. I'm willing to believe that. It's just that the way that this scene is written, it still feels really weird to me, because I feel like the way that Blitzo would be reacting is he would feel really fucking horrible that he didn't go to help Stolas, which, again, I lament is something that I feel like he wouldn't have even done. I feel like he would have gone to help Stolas, but whatever. It feels like Blitzo should have had the Stolas part, and Moxxie and Millie should have been the ones taking Loona to the vet, if anything. I think that also would have fit their characters a lot more, because then you can show, like, Blitzo going on a mad dash to save Stolas. Or hey, maybe you do what the writers did and you have him go to the gas station and then just talk up all the guys and get distracted. Maybe the fact that he takes too long is what causes Stolas to take so much damage, and then that's how he feels like shit. But then obviously you don't have the same line, because then Stolas and Blitzo can actually talk to each other, and they would obviously have a scene where they're talking to each other where Blitz finds Stolas in a pool of his own blood after beating Stryker's ass. It feels weird to me still that Blitzo is just unaware of the fact that Stolas can get hurt. Because Blitzo is a character who, like, Blitzo has a daughter, and he loves his daughter, and he's very overprotective of his daughter, who he genuinely loves, right? I get that his feelings on Stolas are a lot more complicated, but he recognizes that spring break is no place for teenagers, because a lot of people get hurt during spring break. That's why he doesn't want Loona coming with them on the mission. That makes sense. But then we flash forward to a future episode where it's an adult, it's Stolas, and suddenly it just feels like, you know, oh, it's Stolas, it's royalty, he'll never get hurt. It also, again, I feel like I didn't say this point out loud, but his reaction animation-wise and his actual later scene where Stryker, you know, obviously makes the phone call. He picks up the phone, says, "Your bird's in good hands," crushes the phone. His voice is still being heard on the other side. We see Blitzo, he crushes his own phone, which is like an ongoing thing with Blitzo. He always, like, crushes his phones. I've noticed he crushes his phones instead of, like, hanging them up usually. So, it makes sense. And then he, like, angrily shifts all the way into, like, maximum gear and just starts ripping down the highway. He's in a rush. So, obviously, like, part of him wants to make sure Stolas is safe. I feel like a very simple way to make this scene make way more sense is to change his dialogue slightly. I'd still feel like the scene is an ass pull, but it at least set it up better, where you change the dialogue slightly to just have Blitzo say something along the lines of, like, "Stolas will probably be okay, but you two go make sure he comes back safe." That still implies that he can get hurt, but at least you planted the seed of, like, Blitzo saying, he'll probably be fine. Or maybe, you know, you could have a scene of Blitzo being like, he's fine, but just go keep him company. Something like that, right? Maybe that would make it feel a little better instead of him, like, urgently telling them to not waste any time and then somehow knowing exactly where they are, even though Stolas didn't say his exact location. The last thing I want to mention is something that technically is covered in the episode, but isn't actually something that is harped on. In the ending scene, when Blitzo sees Stolas, and then Stolas goes into the hospital, Stolas is in there and he's scrolling through text messages on his phone. These text messages are ranging from the previous episodes. Most notably, there's text messages from the Aussies episode. I don't consider this as any resolution to the season 1 cliffhanger at all. It is a literal blink and you'll miss it dialogue conversation that pretty much amounts to whatever from Blitzo, which is obviously him trying to hide the fact that he is really torn up over it, and this scene deliberately parallels the ending of the season 1 finale, with Stolas now being the one curled up into a ball, and we saw on Stolas' phone earlier that, he has a deal at Aussies or something. So, they're obviously setting up something as, maybe they're gonna go back there. I don't know. But it feels really weird to me that it feels like they should have had a conversation. It feels like the first time that they saw each other at the season 1 finale, a conversation should have happened. But because of how the show was written, they do this plotline with Octavia going to the surface, and I keep saying surface like it's Undertale, with her going to the human realm, and so, obviously, order of importance, saving Stolas' daughter, saving a person, or a demon, is way more important than squashing your beef. Because obviously that would be a whole scene. So what I expected initially when watching that episode is that they would squash their beef right before they got to Octavia, or possibly afterwards, right? They don't. Instead, what we get is Blitzo fucking around on the set of a show and Stolas being there with him, when the only reason he went to the human world was to go and find his daughter. And he's encouraging Blitzo to do the show, and there's no, thoughts that, this is gonna help him find his daughter at all. They don't know where his daughter is. Loona's, ironically, usually the character who's, the least interested in the main plot, and usually fucks off and does her own thing, is the one who's the most interested in finding Octavia, which coincidentally is kind of a cool thing from the writers, because they're both daughters of fucked up daddies, because daddy issues. Perma, the show. But they do share a cool scene, and I like that. It just feels weird that, you introduce Stolas back into the episode, he's interacting with Blitzo, but they can't have their conversation. Imagine you're Blitzo, right? The guy's daughter walks into your office, steals the book, and just disappears. You call up this guy who you've had major beef with, and you just cut to the chase. You say, hey man, your daughter came to our office and just disappeared. Sorry. That guy comes in furious, fucking mad as shit, and he starts blaming you for losing his daughter, right? Blitzo, a smart-ass character, would probably say something about the Aussies situation that happened, right? He'd probably, bring up something where it's yeah, the last time we worked together it didn't go so well either. Or something like that. And probably with a lot more explicitives and superlatives in there. Probably a lot more curse words, too. And maybe a sexual joke in there as well. Maybe 2 of them. But we don't get that. Instead, what we get is just them talking about his daughter, and talking about how she took the book, and Loona kind of let her. It feels weird. It feels like we're just missing a scene there. And so, now, I guess we're supposed to know, hey, they texted about it, but the way that season 1 finale, imagine I told you, the finale of a TV show amounts to a payoff that's a text message half a season later. That just feels wrong. It feels like we were robbed of an actual scene. We're, of course, gonna probably get, if they do go back to Aussies, a proper scene that explains it, because I guess clearly the writers haven't forgotten it now, but it feels like the dramatic tension of that scene has already been released. And then you released it even harder by confirming that they've, talked about it, but scrolling past it so quickly, people have to, pause to actually read the conversation. And when they read it, most of it is just Blitzo being whatever. That sucks. I promise going forward that I'm going to put a lot more time into things. If I am going to critique a show and review it, I need to do more due diligence and hold myself to a better standard, because, like I said at the beginning of this video, I didn't expect many people to watch my rant. I posted it just because I wanted it to be out there. I didn't think this many people would see it. It still feels entirely surreal. And to those who did see it, I do want to shout out the Helluva Boss community, because I do feel like a lot of people shit-talk the Helluva Boss community. My comment section was pretty fucking chill, pretty tight. I really didn't see much, like, horrible shit that I don't see on play. Like, maybe the Twitter side of the Helluva Boss community is, like, where a lot of the people are that are, like, more the ones that people talk about more. But on YouTube, on my shitty YouTube channel, on my shitty rant, those people, I guess, didn't find my video yet. Here's me knocking on wood before they fucking show up tomorrow. So yeah, thanks for watching.